On February 4, 1997, the Venerable Lobsang Gyatso, director of the Institute of Buddhist Dialectics, was murdered at his home, just about 100 paces from His Holiness the Dalai Lama's residence in Dharamsala, North India. 2 of his students were stabbed to death with him. The Indian police investigation revealed that the triple murder had been carried out by 6 young monks belonging to the so-called Dorje Shugden Religious and Charitable Society headquartered in Delhi. Popular tradition traces the origin of Dorje Shugden to Tugu Thakpa Gyaltsen, who died in Lhasa in 1656, but not before offering a negative prayer. As a result of this negative prayer, he was reborn as a harmful spirit. It is said that the spirit went to Tashilhumpu Monastery, seat of his previous incarnation's root guru, Panchen Lobsang Chogyal. But Tashilhumpu's 8 protector deities stopped him. He then went to Sakya Monastery, where the throne holder asked him to identify himself. The spirit said,
"I am the spirit of Gelug tradition. I am in need of ritual cakes."
The Sakya throne holder built an abode for the spirit and then appointed him a protector of the Sakya doctrine. Later, Shugden was largely dropped from the Sakya pantheon, but gained a foothold among a certain segment of Gelug Lamas earlier this century.
This issue, which has remained controversial for some 300 years, has its origin in the difference between Tugu Thakpa Gyaltsen and the 5th Dalai Lama. In his autobiography, the 5th Dalai Lama writes that he performed a fire ritual against Shugden, during which he composed a prayer to protected deities. In the prayer, the 5th Dalai Lama says that he is performing this ritual to vanquish Shugden, who is harming the Buddha Dharma and sentient beings. He clearly says that Thakpa Gyaltsen's negative prayer resulted in his rebirth as Shugden. The 5th Dalai Lama emphatically talks about this in both his open and secret teachings. So there is no truth to the claim made by some people these days that the 5th Dalai Lama practiced Shugden. If Shugden was a wrathful protector of the Buddhist doctrine in general and Tsongkhapa's doctrine in particular, Panchen Lobsang Chogyal and the 8 protector deities should have known this and allowed him entry to Tashilhumpu Monastery. And when Shugden could not gain entry to Tashilhumpu, he went to Sakya. The Sakya throne holder of that time made him an offering of blood or something like that. This was how the Sakya started propitiating Shugden. But nowadays, only a very small number of them follow the practice.
In the beginning, the Sakya throne holder Sonam Rinchen bound Shugden to the oath of protecting Dharma. However, neither Shugden nor other worldly spirits were depended on during prayer meetings at Sakya. The statue of Shugden was in some shrine rooms, but in the lowest category in the pantheon. No Sakya follower has ever taken life-pledging empowerment through the medium of Shugden. In fact, no Sakya Lama even seems to believe that Shugden holds the life-pledging empowerment. Later, Shugden worship decreased greatly among the Sakya, mainly due to the efforts of my root guru, Ngor Khangsar Khenchen Dorje Chang, a leading light among the later Sakya Lamas. Rinpoche was extremely unhappy with Shugden and advised on the demerits of Shugden practice. But he didn't seem to have destroyed Shugden statues or shrines. A disciple of Rinpoche, Ngawang Yönteng Gyatso, took strong action, ousting Shugden statues from monasteries and come and destroying them. Then there was Khenze Dorje Chang Chogyal, who was also very unhappy with Shugden practice. Although he didn't destroy statues, he performed rituals to banish Shugden. Since 3 leading pre-invasion Sakya Lamas were against Shugden, this practice declined greatly among Sakya followers.
Shugden devotion as we see it today was started early this century by Tagpu Tempe Ngutrup. Claiming pure vision inspiration, he composed the life-pledging empowerment of Shugden, and the practice became popular among his disciples. Strident propagation by one prominent disciple, Pabongka Dechen Yingpo displaced the 13th Dalai Lama, who then restricted this practice. However, after the 13th Dalai Lama died in 1933, Pabongka spread the practice widely among Gelugpa lamas in Lhasa. Some of Pabongka's disciples in Kham created conflicts between the old and new schools of Tibetan Buddhism. They destroyed statues of Padmasambhava and Nyingma protected deities of the old school, preached against the recital of Padmasambhava's mantra and destroyed scriptures. They taught that Shugden should be the prime refuge, as the embodiment of the Buddha, Sangha, and Dharma. In some small monasteries in southern Tibet, monks ran amok and destroyed Nyingma spiritual artifacts while claiming to be possessed by Shugden.
Foremost Gelug lamas of the past would have taken notice of Shugden if he was really the embodiment of the three refuge. But there is no historical record to show that they took any interest in Shugden. Therefore, I cannot accept Shugden as the embodiment of the three refuge.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama's action to discourage the practice of Shugden is not without precedent. The fifth Dalai Lama performed a fire ritual against Shugden. Since then, highly realized lamas of all schools of Tibetan Buddhism have forbidden the practice of Shugden among their disciples.
The Nyingma tradition has had many highly realized beings. During the time of Padmasambhava, Shantarakshita, and King Tison Detsen, many spirits were subdued and bound by oath to protect the Dharma. We Nyingma followers honor these protectors. Shugden, on the other hand, was born during the time of the fifth Dalai Lama. He was not known before that.
Realizing that Shugden practice was harming the Tibetan national cause and degenerating the Buddhist doctrine, His Holiness the Dalai Lama counseled his people several times, discouraging the practice. This did not go down well with a small number of staunch Shugden worshippers. They reacted by forming organizations to launch aggressive smear campaigns against His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan exile government, accusing them of violating the religious freedom of Tibetans. These organizations include the Dorje Shugden Religious and Charitable Society in Delhi, Gelug Peace Foundation in Kathmandu, and Dakum Tensugling in the United States. Print and audio materials criticizing His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the exiled Tibetan government were distributed. Also, caricatures demonizing His Holiness the Dalai Lama are circulated anonymously. Gyaltsang Gyatso, a self-styled Gishi or Doctor of Divinity and prominent Shugden activist, heads a Dharma center in Britain. Claiming to be the third Buddha, he forbids photos of His Holiness the Dalai Lama among his followers. Far from supporting His Holiness the Dalai Lama's efforts to regain freedom for Tibet, Gyaltsang Gyatso incites his disciples to demonstrate against the Tibetan leader and damage his reputation. The Dorje Shugden Religious and Charitable Society was established only to undermine His Holiness the Dalai Lama. It seeks out organizations and religious persons known to be at odds with the Tibetan exile government. The aim is to exploit these differences to serve the society's vested interest. Before his murder, the Shugden Society sent threatening letters to the Venerable Lobsang Gyatso, who had always been an outspoken critic of Shugden practice. 6 young monks from the society tailed Lobsang Gyatso's jeep from Delhi to Dharamsala. Shortly after these, Shugden fundamentalists murdered Lobsang Gyatso and his 2 students. Their bodies bore multiple wounds. Indian police investigators established a clear link between the killers and the Shugden Society in Delhi.
We have identified 2 of the murderers.
Wir haben 2 der Mörder identifiziert und wir haben klare Indizien, dass die Täter mit der Shugden-Vereinigung in direkter Verbindung standen.
Evidence, linking evidence, which is directly connecting these murderers with the case.
In this interview with the Swiss television, the chief of Kangra police describes evidences linking the 6 murderers to the Shugden Society in Delhi. It's confirmed that the 6 murderers have fled to Tibet, where they enjoy Chinese government patronage. On 20th March 1996, just a few days after the murders, the cabinet received a letter signed with the pseudonym Monk Lobsang Chungne of Sera Monastery. The letter begins, "Alas, divisionist Dalai Lama and Samto Rinpoche, chairman of the Tibetan Parliament in exile." Referring to the murders, the letter asks, "Did you enjoy eating the 3 carcasses at the time of Happy Fire Ox Losar this year? The murders took place on the eve of Tibetan New Year. You will be treated," it said, "to many more carcasses if you continue the present course." Shugden activists also sent a caricature like this to the Dharamsala office of His Holiness and to Indian banks and restaurants in town. In April 1996, Lobsang Khedup, secretary of the Tibetan Department of Culture and Religion, and Temba Soba, representative of the office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, went to Mankot settlement in South India to announce and explain His Holiness's advice on the Shugden practice. One night, a group of 13 Shugden monks made for the officials' room. Sensing their violent intent, local Tibetans cordoned the guest house, but the monks seized a lone guard, threatened death if he raised alarm, and gave him a letter and knife to hand to the officials.
At 12 midnight, there was a knock on our door. We felt suspicious, but then I saw 3 or 4 administrators of Ganden Monastery's Jangze College. They said 11 monks from Sera Monastery, dressed in lay clothes, had been seen moving towards Monkot, where we were staying then. The administrators asked us to come to Ganden Monastery for safety. I said nothing would happen to us. The administrators left and I went back to sleep. Later I was told that 15 or 16 volunteers had guarded our guest house that night. When we woke up, the settlement officer told us that 13 monks, 2 in robes and 11 in lay clothes, had attempted to come to our guest house during the night. The monks seized one of the volunteer guards, gagged him and threatened to kill him if he raised alarm. They asked him how many people were guarding us. He said there were many. Then the monks whispered among themselves and finally gave him a letter and knife to hand to us. The letter said, "We were unable to get you this time, but we will get you later."
Some Western Buddhists belonging to Shugden organizations conduct aggressive smear campaigns against His Holiness the Dalai Lama on the internet. They also stage demonstrations against him when he is touring overseas. A month after the letter and knife incident, on the night of 27 May 1996, the house of the Venerable Wangka, former abbot of Changsi College of Ganden Monastery, was set alight and he suffered minor burns. Then, in January 1997, Geshe Tilye Tenzin, treasurer of Changsi College and member of the local assembly in Mankot, was brutally beaten in Delhi. In the same year, there was an arson attack on the rice and hay burns of Changsi College.
Someone grabbed my hand and pulled me to a spot near Ngakpa Chasang in Delhi. He asked me if I was Gentinle. I said yes. The men in front didn't say anything. But someone behind asked me why I interfered in their affairs and why we had held the meeting in Dharamsala. As I turned to look back, I was hit on the head and legs. I fell unconscious. I couldn't figure out who they were. They had fled when I regained consciousness. Now it is quite easy for everyone to understand who set fire to the barns of the monastery. The monks of Changsi College support His Holiness and the Tibetan exile government. We have to. The fact that we have achieved so much, despite being in a foreign land, is due to their efforts. In appreciation of this, we have taken a firm stand. Some people are unhappy with our loyalty, so they set fire to the barns of the monastery.
When Kelsang Yishi, then a minister, and Sangdo Rinpoche, chairman of the Tibetan Parliament, went to Ganden and Sera monasteries to announce and explain His Holiness the Dalai Lama's counsel on Shugden practice, they were greeted by one of the saddest scenes in the history of exiled Tibetans. About 300 monks, guided by Shugden activists, demonstrated against the officials, alleging that the Tibetan exile government denied them freedom of religion and expression.
The Assembly resolution was not an order for people to stop Shugden practice. It was merely a request and not a demand or an order or a law to end the practice. The resolution said that since the practice of Shugden was harmful to the life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan national cause, the Assembly of Tibetan People's Deputies would request all Tibetans to stop it in deference to the advice of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The resolution went on to say that those not willing to give up Shugden practice should not receive teachings from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So this was in fact a resolution in the form of a request. This issue has nothing to do with human rights. It is a matter of how a particular religion must be practiced. If this were construed as a violation of human rights, then it would not be possible to give advice to on the practice of any religion in the world.
Evidence has come to light confirming a close connection between Shugden activists and the Chinese government in Beijing. On 22 November 1996, Kangchen Rinpoche, representative of the Shugden Society in Italy, paid respects to the Beijing-appointed Panchen Lama in China and pledged support to him. The Panchen Lama, recognized by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, meanwhile, remains under house arrest at an unknown location in China. Using antics like this, Kangchen Rinpoche deceives his Western followers. The perpetrators of the triple murder in Dharamsala are now enjoying the protection and patronage of the Chinese government in Tibet. The authorities in the so-called Tibet Autonomous Region published a handbook of religious education, which claims that the Dalai clique's ban is employed to make Shugden practice a spent force and scapegoat. The handbook goes on to claim that this ban has shown the insincerity of the Dalai clique's apparent advocacy of religious freedom, human rights, and world peace. It says that the old Chushikangtuk organization and Shugden worshippers support each other since both suffer the persecution of the Dalai Lama and his exile government. In Lithang Monastery, eastern Tibet, the Chinese authorities arrested the Venerable Lobsang Chöngyur. His crime was to circulate His Holiness the Dalai Lama's counsel on Shugden practice, as a result of which Lithang monks closed their Shugden shrine room. The Chinese authorities then forced the monastery to reopen the Shugden shrine.
The most obvious confirmation of the connection between the Shugden group and the Chinese government is that Shugden members escorted officials of the Chinese embassy in Delhi to a Tibetan settlement. Moreover, the Shugden campaigns have greatly boosted the confidence of the Chinese government. In May last year, Ten Qin, party secretary of the Tibet Autonomous Region, boasted that the Dalai clique is now suffering a setback. Ten also stated that Tibetans had awakened from their slumber and were opposing the Dalai clique. He also talked of the alleged setback suffered by what he called the separatist elements. It is clear that the money for the Shugden activists campaign in exile comes from the Chinese government. In criticizing His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan government in exile, the Chinese government and the Shugden activists echo each other's rhetoric. Some letters circulated by Shugden activists openly boast of the confidence they derive from the Chinese government's support. So, the connection is clear. It's also becoming very obvious that the Shugden activists are connected with the Mongolian Tibetan Affairs Commission in Taiwan. there is a person called Ngalama Lobsang Yeshe, who led Western Buddhists in demonstrations against His Holiness in Germany, the United States, and other places. On 10 October 1998, he was a guest of the Mongolian Tibetan Affairs Commission at the Taiwanese National Day function in Taipei. The commission organizes what it calls functions to propagate Tibetan Buddhism and culture in Taiwan. But it always invites people like Yongde Tugu of Serame, Titul of Jiangze, and other non-Shugden supporters to speak at these functions. The Shugden activists also seem to have a lot of money to spend on their campaigns, not just 1 or 2 million Indian rupees. Their huge spending power clearly indicates a link with the commission. So, there are clear indications that the Shugden activists are connected to both Communist China and the Mongolian Tibetan Affairs Commission of Taiwan.
Now, regarding Shugden, well, the name Shugden has escaped my lips just now. We Kagyu followers normally do not mention this name without fear. There is no Shugden practitioner among Kagyu followers. The reason why we fear the one I named just now is because we believe he causes obstacles to spiritual practice and brings discord in families and among the community of monks.
In their global campaign, Shugden activists allege that the Tibetan exile government, on orders from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, expels children of Shugden followers from schools and dismisses Shugden supporters from government posts. We spoke to the chairman of the Tibetan Public Service Commission and asked him if there's any truth in these claims. We asked the same question to the heads of Tibetan schools.
There is absolutely no truth in the claim that we expel Shugden followers from Tibetan exile government jobs. The cabinet and the departments under it have made this point clear on several occasions, but the allegation persisted. So, our commission issued a written clarification. In the entire history of our Public Service Commission, nobody has been expelled for following Shugden. I would like to ask the accusers to name the allegedly ousted personnel, give their ranks and the dates of expulsions.
The Tibetan Department of Education runs 86 schools in India, Nepal and Bhutan. Not one has refused admission or expelled any child for the Shugden reason. Neither has the Tibetan government issued orders to this effect.
I must point out clearly that the Tibetan Homes Foundation has neither refused admission to anyone nor expelled anyone for following Shugden practice. It seems there are rumors about an old woman who was an inmate in our old people's home some years ago. Our daughter worked at our foundation. They are relatives of Geshe Kelsang Gyaltsen in England. The two are rumored to have been expelled from here. The daughter resigned to go to the United States, as she wrote in her application. At that time, her mother applied to leave the old people's home. So this is the reason they left, not because of threats or coercion from the Homes Foundation.
No one from the Central School for Tibetans in Missouri has been expelled for following Shugden. For example, Lobsang Tupden, Shugden supporter and former teacher, had his son in this school. After completing his class 10th examinations in another school, the boy came here in 1996. He completed his 2-year commerce course and had no problems here. This year, he passed the All India Higher Secondary examinations and left our school like other students. Therefore, he was certainly not expelled.
No one has been expelled from here for following Shugden.
Yishi Chadeng, president of the Shugden Society in Delhi, had 2 sons in our school. One was admitted in 1993 and another in 1995. But in 1996, the parents took the children away, claiming their lives were threatened. They were not expelled. No one has been expelled because his or her parents were Shugden followers.
Shugden supporters claim that the Tibetan government made an attempt on the life of Kasur Kundeling, for criticizing the Dalai Lama's ban on Shugden practice and opposing his middle way approach to resolving the problem of Tibet. We asked Kasur Kundeling if this is true.
There is no truth in the claim that the Tibetan government sent men to kill me because I had spoken strongly against the middle way approach during a meeting in Dharamsala. In fact, we never had such a meeting. I went to Dharamsala to receive an award, which the Tibetan government was giving to retired officials. I was attacked a few days after I returned home, but Dharamsala has nothing to do with this. I heard some time back that my photo was shown on television with the claim that Shugden critics had made an attempt on my life. I think this was the invention of Shugden people. Members of the Shugden Society in Delhi had been looking for my photograph. A young Tibetan man, claiming to be a college student in Delhi, brought a Westerner to my house one evening. I think that was toward the end of October 98. The young Tibetan introduced the Westerner as a famous television journalist who had interviewed His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the cabinet. The cabinet, he said, had advised the journalist to go to Rajput and interview me. They arrived as night was falling. I told them to come next day if they had important matters to talk about. They did not turn up. After 15 or 20 days later, we held my son's wedding. Among the guests was a young man who is driver for the Shugden Society in Delhi. His sister is staff of Tibetan Homes Foundation in Mussoorie. The man and his sister came together. The sister took my photo without my knowledge. Then she passed the camera to her brother, who immediately hurried out. Later, I asked people to describe the photo shown on television. I was told that I had scarves around my neck. I realized immediately that it was the photo taken during the wedding. So this is what happened.
Shugden propagandists claim that the Assembly of Tibetan People's Deputies passed a resolution against the appointment of Shugden petitioners to be Supreme Justice Commissioners in the exile administration. We asked the Vice Chairman of the Tibetan Assembly if this is true.
One assembly member said that Shugden followers should be disqualified from appointment as Supreme Justice Commissioners. But this was his personal opinion, which the assembly ignored. The assembly neither discussed this suggestion nor passed any resolution to the effect.
Shugden supporters wrote many letters to Amnesty International, claiming that His Holiness the Dalai Lama curtailed their human rights and religious freedom. Amnesty International sent this reply.
None of the material Amnesty International has received contains evidence of abuses which fall within Amnesty International's mandate for action. Amnesty International campaigns on the grave violations of human rights in Tibet.
A new organization called the International Coalition of Shugden Supporters held a meeting in New Delhi which brought together groups and individuals known to act against the interest of the Tibetan national cause. The meeting cast aspersions on His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Shugden activists circulated a memorandum purportedly signed by well-known international personalities and Indian ministers and asking His Holiness to withdraw his statement on the Shugden practice. It later transpired that the signatures were forgeries.
During His Holiness the Dalai Lama's visit to the United States in April 1998, a bulky document was submitted to him in the name of International Coalition of Shugden Supporters. It asked His Holiness the Dalai Lama to withdraw his statement on Shugden practice. One page had the names and what purported to be the signatures of several Indian ministers. It was obvious that the signatures were forgeries. We wanted to confirm this, so we met the ministers and asked if they had signed any letter addressed to His Holiness the Dalai Lama and expressing support for the International Coalition of Shugden Supporters. The ministers were shocked. They gave us written assurances that they had never signed such a letter. There were signatures of foreigners and Tibetans as well. We sent the document to forensic experts who confirmed that most of the signatures were by the same hand. So the claim of wide support made in this letter needs to be investigated. It became clear that they would like to deceive us into thinking that they enjoyed wide support.
Gishi Chimitsiring is the secretary of Dorje Shugden Religious and Charitable Society in Delhi. In an interview with a reporter, Gishi Chimitsiring falsifies the circumstances under which monks of Shatsi College signed a letter guaranteeing to give up Shugden practice.
In April 1996, they came to Mangod to collect signatures. I was then in Mangod. Even the monks of Shatsi College were asked to sign an undertaking to give up Shugden practice. There was an ex-abbot, I will not name him here. This ex-abbot told his students that the Dalai Lama is our refuge, both in this and the next life. Similarly, Shugden is a qualified protector deity. Now you are called upon to sign your undertaking to give up Shugden practice. You should sign it while visualizing that you are signing an undertaking to continue the practice rather than give it up.
We asked the 3 surviving ex-abbots of Shatsi for confirmation of Chimitsiring's claim. Ex-abbot Chamba Yishi faxed us this reply from Malaysia to say that he had never made such a statement. Amcho Rinpoche, the then abbot of Gandhi Shatsi, recalls.
Yes, I was the abbot of Shatsi College at that time. I was present at the meeting. There was a lot of discussion, but I don't remember any abbot say such a thing.
I never told anyone that His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Shugden are both important. I never advised anyone to sign an undertaking to continue Shugden practice. I can swear by the Triple Gem that I never said such a thing. I have never deceived His Holiness the Dalai Lama and am determined not to do so in future. Kindly give this message to His Holiness.
It is clear that Gishi Chimitsiring is trying to score victories by distorting reality. The late Tijang Rinpoche was junior tutor to His Holiness the Dalai Lama and practitioner of Shugden. Pabongka Rinpoche was one of Tijang Rinpoche's root teachers in pre-invasion Tibet. The teenage reincarnation of Tijang Rinpoche is now in Switzerland under the tutelage of Gonsa Tuku, a prominent Shugden practitioner and activist. Gonsa Rinpoche has created rumors of mythical threats to the young reincarnated tutor's life if he returns to India. So instead of undergoing intensive studies at his monastic university in South India, Tijang Rinpoche is now based at Gonsa Tuku's center in Switzerland. We asked Lati Rinpoche about his student Tijang Rinpoche.
In 1996, I went to Switzerland and taught Tijang Rinpoche for 3 months. I frequently urged him to come to India. Finally, he decided to come at Tibetan New Year in 1997. Then I went to the United States. On my way back to India, I stopped over in Switzerland and met Tijang Rinpoche again to repeat my request. He agreed to come. Shatsi College also wrote requesting him to come. I did not get to write a letter, but I did give him a call. Tijang Rinpoche merely told me that he would get back to me later. He didn't say whether he was going to come or not. Nowadays, he says he will come, but doesn't specify when. I wonder what is preventing him from coming here.
Shugden supporters claim that the office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama does not pass on Tijang Rinpoche's letters to His Holiness.
There is no basis to the allegation that we held back from His Holiness letters written by the household of Tijang Rinpoche. I can also say with full conviction that members of Tijang Rinpoche's household have never been refused an audience. Regarding the talk of threats to Tijang Rinpoche's life, in September 1997, Nobu Chembe, who is an old attendant of Tijang Rinpoche household, came and said he had received a call from Tijang Rinpoche's 2 attendants in Switzerland,
telling him that Tijan Rinpoche had initially planned to come for the spring teaching, but that they had received calls from India and elsewhere warning of danger to Tijan Rinpoche's life if he came to Dharamsala. The office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama sent a letter to request Tijan Rinpoche to come to Dharamsala as soon as possible and guaranteeing Rinpoche's security. The cabinet also wrote to Rinpoche requesting him not to miss the teachings and undertaking full responsibility for his security. Similarly, some disciples of the previous Tijan Rinpoche wrote requesting him to come to India and receive all the necessary spiritual teachings. They said they saw no danger to Rinpoche's life. Unfortunately, Rinpoche did not come.
Since Tijan Rinpoche's reincarnation is here in Switzerland, I expected to meet him here today, but that was not to be so. It saddens me a bit. As far as Rinpoche is concerned, about 2 years ago, I said I would do a doorbell divination and decide whether he should continue the Shugden practice or not. If Rinpoche has to continue the practice, I will make this an exception. However, if others want to consider Shugden very important, then I request them not to take initiations and spiritual vows from me. Since this has to do with the purity of the spiritual bond between teacher and disciple, I request Shugden followers not to receive initiation and vows from me. Instead, they should follow their own ways and practice without having anything to do with me.
Shugden is a ghost. We Nyingma practitioners do not follow him. We propitiate only those protectors that were bound by oath by Padmasambhava. Shugden came after Padmasambhava. Shugden is a hungry ghost in the human realm.
On January 1st, 1998, Changze Chöje Rinpoche, the abbots and ex-abbots of Drepung, Sera, Gandhin, the abbots and ex-abbots of Gyume and Gyute monasteries, Gyume Lama Unze, the abbots and ex-abbots of Namgyal Monastery, and the abbots of Tashilhumbu Monastery and Tawang Monastery met under the chairmanship of Gandhin Throneholder and unanimously passed a resolution opposing the Shugden practice and vowing to break all ties with Shugden worshippers.
It is outrageous to claim that His Holiness has no authority to give advice to the 4 schools of Tibetan Buddhism, particularly the Gelug school. We can say with certainty that Gelug followers are not allowed to worship evil spirits. These activists are just making preposterous claims.
Chushi Kangtuk is an association of former Tibetan resistance fighters. Its controversial leader, Litang Athar, and his cohorts were voted out of office for their anti-Tibetan activity. But they refused to step down, so their group is today known as Old Chushi Kangtuk. This Old Chushi Kangtuk held a 3-day meeting in South India from 5th April 1999. Shugden activists from Pombra House of Sera Monastery and from Dokang House of Shatsi College participated in the meeting to signal their support for the Old Chushi Kangtuk. This confirms the Chinese government's assertion that the Old Chushi Kangtuk organization and Shugden activists support each other. Also, Shugden activists started propagating their practice so hard that His Holiness was forced to step up his restriction.
Initially, I hadn't been very firm against Shugden practice, but some people pushed themselves too far. That is why I had to speak firmly last time. If I remained silent on this, I would be at peace. But this is an important matter, and I am the only one given the authority and responsibility to speak on matters like this. If I close my eyes and keep quiet, it will be my fault. If people don't listen to me, I can't be faulted. I have to give guidance from both political and spiritual perspectives. Whether you listen to me or not is your choice. I can't give orders or impose my will on you.